It began so innocently. That's how these stories always start, isn't it? The slow, imperceptible shift from safety to danger, from certainty to something else entirely. I still remember every detail of that autumn evening, the way the navy blue dress felt against my skin, how it hugged my figure just enough to make me feel beautiful but still respectable, the sound of leaves crunching beneath my heels as I stepped onto our driveway, the scent of approaching rain hanging in the crisp air. "Are you sure this isn't too much?" I asked Ryan, smoothing the fabric nervously, feeling like something was different about tonight, something I couldn't name yet. He smiled that smile that had carried me through 8 years of marriage, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "You look beautiful, Emma. Perfect." His hand found the small of my back, warm and secure. God, how could I have known that night would bend the course of our marriage in ways I never imagined possible? The drive to Richard's house was quiet, that haunting kind of quiet where your thoughts grow too loud and time stretches thin. Streetlights cast golden halos against the darkening sky, each one marking another moment closer to a point of no return I didn't even know existed. Richard Hamilton, my husband's boss. A name I'd heard countless times over dinner conversations and phone calls, but a man whose eyes I'd never met, until that night. His home stood magnificent against the twilight, warm lights spilling from tall windows, a sprawling front lawn that spoke of success and stability. The kind of place that makes you immediately aware of your own smaller existence. "Emma, it's wonderful to finally meet you," he said when he opened the door, his voice carrying a depth that photographs couldn't capture. Tall, confident, with silver streaks in his hair that caught the light when he moved. He extended his hand, and something in that simple greeting felt weightier than it should have. "Brian always speaks so highly of you." I felt heat rise to my cheeks, a blush I couldn't control. "Thank you. It's lovely to meet you too." Have you ever felt someone's attention like a physical touch? That's how it was whenever Richard looked at me that evening. Not inappropriate, not crossing any line you could name, but undeniable. His gaze held something curious, something that stirred me in ways I hadn't felt in years. While he talked, with other guests, I would catch his eyes finding me across the room, lingering just long enough to make my heart flutter before looking away. The night progressed with laughter and wine and conversation that blurred around me. Candles flickered on elegantly set tables, casting long shadows that danced across faces and walls. I found myself watching Richard as he moved effortlessly among his guests, magnetic, attentive, somehow different from what I'd expected. Different, in ways that made me increasingly aware of myself. At some point, the gentle hum of voices and soft music became too much. I slipped away to his terrace, desperate for cool air against my suddenly burning skin. The garden lay bathed in moonlight, the scent of jasmine mingling with autumn leaves. I leaned against the railing, trying to steady my breathing, wondering why I felt so awakened. "It's peaceful out here, isn't it?" I hadn't heard him follow. Richard stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read, respectful of my space but somehow still too close. "You have a beautiful home," I managed, my fingers gripping the railing tighter. "Thank you." A pause stretched between us, comfortable in a way it shouldn't have been. "Emma, if you don't mind my saying, you seem like someone who appreciates deeper conversations more than small talk." I laughed softly, surprised by his perception. "I suppose that's true. I've never been good at weather discussions and weekend plans. Can I ask you something?" His voice lowered, creating an intimacy between us, though he hadn't moved an inch closer. "You and Brian seem genuinely happy. How do you maintain that kind of connection after so many years?" The question caught me off guard. Not because it was intrusive, but because of the vulnerability behind it. This powerful, confident man was asking me about connection, about intimacy, with a sincerity that made my guard slip. "It hasn't always been easy," I admitted, surprised by my own honesty. "We've learned to communicate openly, to listen deeply, to keep discovering new things about each other, even when routine threatens to make us strangers. I think it's about allowing ourselves to grow together, not separately or against each other." He nodded slowly, something shifting behind his eyes. "That's rare, special even." He looked out at the garden, then back at me. "Most people settle for much less." The moment stretched between us, fragile as spun glass. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. Then he looked down, a fleeting embarrassment crossing his features. "There's something I'd like to suggest." he said carefully, his voice dropping even lower. "But please know it's completely respectful and sincere. If it makes you uncomfortable in any way, just say the word and we'll never speak of it again." Heart quickened, pounding so hard I was certain he could hear it. What exactly was happening here? Was this heading somewhere I should stop immediately? "What is it?" I asked, barely above a whisper. He glanced back toward the house once, making sure we were alone, then met my eyes with an intensity that made me catch my breath. "I've struggled for a long time to open myself emotionally," he confessed, voice tinged with a vulnerability I never expected from someone like him. "My relationships tend to be superficial, even though I crave something deeper. I see in you someone who deeply understands what it means to connect, to truly know another person. I'd like your help with understanding how to build that kind of emotional connection." Relief washed through me, followed immediately by confusion at my own relief. What had I been expecting? What had I been hoping for? And why did the reality of his request make me feel both disappointed and intrigued? "I realize this is unusual," he added gently, reading my silence. "I don't want you to feel pressured, but I respect your insights, Emma, and I think you might be exactly the person who could help me understand what I've been missing." Looking back now, I should have walked away, should have smiled politely and rejoined my husband inside, should have recognized the danger in this seemingly innocent request. But there was something in Richard's eyes, a sincerity, a genuine longing for connection that disarmed me completely. "Richard, your honesty means a great deal," I heard myself say, my voice soft but steady. "Let's talk more about this. Maybe there's some way I can help." His relief was visible, his smile returning with genuine gratitude. "Thank you, Emma. Truly, do. You know what it feels like to stand at the edge of something dangerous but beautiful? To feel your life tilting on its axis while everything around you remains perfectly still? That's where I stood that night under the autumn moon, not knowing how deeply this conversation would change everything. In the weeks that followed, Richard and I developed a friendship unlike any I'd experienced. We would meet for walks in Riverside, park for coffee in quiet corners of town, always in public, always appropriate. Our conversations grew deeper, longer, more revealing. I found myself sharing things I'd never told anyone else. Fears about growing older, dreams I'd set aside, doubts I sometimes had about the life I'd chosen. Brian knew about these meetings, supported them even. "I think it's good for him," he'd say with that trusting smile that now haunts my memories. "You're helping him, Em. He seems different at work lately, more present." But beneath the surface of our innocent friendship, a current pulled at me. An electricity I pretended not to feel whenever Richard and I were alone. The way my stomach would tighten when he would text. How I began to dress more carefully on days I knew I'd see him. The thoughts of him that would intrude at odd moments, cooking dinner, driving to work, lying beside my husband in the dark. "You seem distracted lately," Brian said one night, his fingers tracing patterns on my shoulder. "Just tired," I lied, and the ease with which the deception came frightened me. What was I hiding exactly when nothing had happened? Nothing physical, nothing you could name or confess. Just feelings, just thoughts. Just the growing awareness that my heart was being tugged in a direction it shouldn't go. Then came the night Brian had to leave town for business. 2 days. Just 2 days that would change everything. "Promise you'll be all right without me?" he asked, kissing my forehead gently as he packed his overnight bag. I'd pushed his shoulder playfully, forcing a lightness I didn't feel. "Of course. It's only 2 nights. I'm perfectly capable of entertaining myself." He laughed, eyes twinkling, with a warmth and trust I didn't deserve. "I know you are. Just promise you'll call if you need anything." I nodded, swallowing down the guilt that rose like bile in my throat. "I promise." The first night alone passed quietly enough. I caught up on reading, called my sister, went to bed early. It was the second evening when my phone buzzed with a message that made my hands tremble. "Richard, are you free tonight? There's something I'd really like to talk about in person. Dinner, perhaps?" I stared at those words for what felt like hours, my thumb hovering over the screen. Every rational part of me screamed to say no, to create a polite excuse, but my fingers typed something else entirely. "Yes, I'm free. What time?" Within minutes, he suggested a small restaurant at the edge of town, private enough to speak openly, yet comfortably public. "Meet at 7? I'll be there," I replied, already walking to my closet, already choosing what to wear with more care than I should have. The restaurant was warm, intimate, low lighting that softened the edges of everything, including my better judgment. When I arrived, Richard was already seated, looking thoughtful and slightly nervous. The sight of him, that vulnerability beneath his confident exterior, made my heart race in ways it had no right to. "You look lovely, Emma," he said softly as I approached. "Thank you," I replied, feeling a small flutter in my stomach that I tried desperately to ignore. Dinner began cautiously. We spoke of work, of books we'd read, of places we'd traveled. But there was an undercurrent of tension that hadn't been there before, a sense that we were both circling something neither of us was ready to name. "Richard, are you all right?" I finally asked, sensing his distraction. "You seem troubled." He smiled weakly, running a hand through his hair. "There's something I need to say, Emma," he said, his voice strained, fingers tensing around his glass, "and I genuinely don't know how you'll react." I set down my fork, my appetite vanishing in an instant. "It's all right. Whatever it is, we can discuss it openly." He hesitated, then exhaled slowly, gathering courage. "Emma, these past months have changed my life in ways I never imagined possible. Your friendship, your guidance about emotional connection. It's opened something in me I thought was permanently closed." He paused, looking away briefly before meeting my gaze directly. "But I've realized recently that my feelings have grown, beyond friendship," he admitted quietly. "I never intended it, never wanted to complicate your life or mine, but my feelings for you have deepened into something I can't ignore anymore." The confession hung between us, heavy as storm clouds. I stared at him, heart racing, a storm of emotions crashing through me: shock, validation, fear, and something dangerously close to joy. "I'd be lying if I said I hadn't felt it too," I admitted after a long silence, my voice barely steady. "There's been something between us, something I've tried to ignore. But Richard, you know I love Brian deeply. Our marriage isn't perfect, but it's real and it matters to me." "I know," he quickly assured me, reaching across the table but stopping short of touching my hand. "I respect that completely. I respect Brian. I don't want to complicate your life or damage what you have. I only wanted to be honest with you because honesty is what brought us here in the first place." I nodded, feeling my breath tremble softly. "I appreciate your courage. It means a lot that you trust me enough to share this." A long silence stretched between us. The tension was palpable, neither uncomfortable nor awkward, simply heavy with emotion and unspoken possibilities. "Perhaps it's best if we maintain some distance for a while," Richard finally suggested, clearly pained by the idea. "Your marriage and our integrity must come first." Deep sadness filled me, mixed with respect and gratitude for his maturity. "Perhaps you're right," I whispered softly, even as the thought of not seeing him ached within me like a physical wound. We finished our meal in relative quiet, both aware that something precious was ending before it had truly begun. Outside, the cold night air brushed my cheeks as we stepped toward our cars. The street was empty, illuminated softly by the glow of a single lamppost. Richard paused, looking deeply into my eyes. "Emma, before we part," he hesitated, vulnerability and longing mingling in his gaze. "May I do something? Just this once." My heart raced wildly, my mind screaming warnings that my body refused to hear. "Yes," I whispered, slowly, tenderly. Richard stepped closer. He gently lifted my chin to meet his gaze, his eyes filled with warmth, respect, and a longing tempered by deep restraint. I could feel his breath, warm against my skin. Then, with infinite tenderness, he pressed his lips softly against my cheek, lingering just a moment longer than friendship would allow. It was innocent, respectful. No line had been visibly crossed, yet somehow it was more intimate than any kiss I'd ever known. "Thank you," he whispered, stepping away. "For everything." He turned and walked slowly toward his car, leaving me standing quietly beneath the gentle glow of the street lamp, my hand rising involuntarily to touch the place where his lips had been. The drive home felt endless, my thoughts racing in desperate circles. I'd crossed no physical boundary, had done nothing I couldn't technically explain to Brian, and yet emotionally, something profound had shifted. A door had opened that couldn't easily be closed. "What have I done?" I whispered to my reflection. In the rearview mirror. "What am I doing?" The house felt achingly empty when I returned. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, touching Brian's things, his coffee mug, his book on the nightstand, the sweater he'd left draped over a chair. Each object an accusation, each memory a reminder of what I was risking for. For what? Exactly? A feeling? An attraction? The dangerous thrill of being seen in a new way? I barely slept that night, torn between guilt and a persistent, shameful excitement I couldn't fully extinguish. When Brian returned the next evening, I greeted him warmly, but inside I was crumbling, certain my face would betray me. Everything. "Okay?" he asked, noticing something in my expression. "You seem distant, just tired," I said, the lie burning my tongue. "I didn't sleep well without you." At least that part was true. In the days that followed, I waited for some message from Richard, both dreading and hoping for it. But there was only silence, a silence that somehow screamed louder than words. Then, nearly a week later, I received a handwritten note delivered to our mailbox. The handwriting was elegant, thoughtful, unmistakably Richard's. "Emma," it began, "I've spent these days reflecting deeply on everything we've shared. My respect and admiration for you only grow stronger. With distance, meeting you has profoundly changed me, helping me understand the man I wish to become." I sat on our front steps, hands trembling as I read. "But respecting your happiness with Brian is my greatest priority. I've decided to take some time away, to travel and clear my mind. Know that wherever I am, I'll always carry gratitude for what you've taught me about honesty, connection, and emotional courage. You've forever impacted my life, and for that, I'll always be thankful. With deepest sincerity, Richard." Tears filled my eyes, not from sadness alone, but from the depth of his gesture. Richard had given me something profound, insight into my own heart, the true meaning of emotional connection, and a deeper appreciation for my marriage with Brian. His choice to step away wasn't just about respecting boundaries, it was a demonstration of what love actually means. Wanting someone's happiness enough to remove yourself from the equation. I carefully tucked the letter away, hearing Brian call from inside. "Emma, breakfast is ready." Taking a deep breath, I moved toward my husband's voice, heart filled with renewed appreciation, clarity, and quiet gratitude for all that had transpired. But even then, I couldn't help but wonder if Richard and I would ever cross paths again, and how that moment might reshape our futures. Have you ever noticed how some endings are actually beginnings in disguise? How sometimes the universe brings people together, pulls them apart, and then reunites them when they've grown into who they needed to become. Months passed quietly after Richard's departure. Life with Brian returned to its comfortable, familiar rhythm. We redecorated the kitchen, planned a summer vacation, fell back into the gentle routine of our shared life. Yet I couldn't deny that my experiences with Richard had transformed something deep inside me. I cherished my marriage more deeply than ever, but I also understood myself in ways I'd never imagined possible. Then, one quiet spring morning, Brian surprised me with unexpected news at breakfast. "Emma, you'll never guess who reached out to me." "Yesterday," he said casually, pouring fresh coffee into my favorite mug. My heart stuttered. "Who?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He smiled warmly. "Richard. He's back in town and invited us for dinner tomorrow night. Said he missed catching up and that he'd like us both to come." My breath caught, a swirl of emotions filling me, excitement mingled with nervousness, curiosity with apprehension. "How do you feel about it?" I asked carefully, watching Brian's reaction. He shrugged easily, sitting beside me at our kitchen table. "Honestly, I'm glad. I've missed him, and whatever conversations you two shared before he left, I think they did him a lot of good. He sounds different on the phone, calmer, more thoughtful." I relaxed, grateful again for Brian's steady trust. "In me, in us. Then we'll go," I said softly. "It'll be good to see him again." The next evening, we arrived at Richard's home, the scene so reminiscent of that first dinner party that I felt a strange sense of déjà vu. But this time, when Richard opened the door, his smile held no hidden currents, no unspoken questions. As our eyes met, a deep and respectful understanding passed silently between us. Acknowledgement of what had been, appreciation for what now was. Dinner was filled with laughter and warmth, yet beneath the casual conversation lingered subtle yet meaningful acknowledgments of everything we'd experienced. Richard was indeed changed, more open, more relaxed, more confident in himself emotionally. Seeing that transformation moved me profoundly, affirming the significance of the bond we'd shared, however briefly. Later, as Brian stepped away to answer a quick work call, Richard gently turned toward me. The evening air drifting through an open window carried the fragrance of fresh blossoms and new beginnings. "Emma," he began softly, his eyes radiating a sincere warmth that held no agenda, no desire beyond honest connection. "Seeing you and Brian together tonight, truly happy, it fills me with gratitude. I needed you to know that our friendship taught me the greatest lessons of my life. You showed me what it means to have the courage to genuinely love, respect, and let go." My throat tightened, heart swelling with a bittersweet recognition of what might have been, but also with pride in what actually was. "I'm proud of you. Richard, you've grown so much. It's inspiring to see." "Because of you," he replied simply. "I've learned that true love isn't possession or control. It's selfless. It seeks the happiness of others, even if that means stepping back." Brian returned then, smiling warmly at both of us, sensing nothing beyond friendship and mutual respect. As the evening drew to a close and we prepared to leave, Richard walked us to the door. While Brian headed to the car, Richard briefly touched my arm, his voice quiet, filled with gentle sincerity. "Thank you, Emma," he whispered, "for everything." I squeezed his hand gently in return, our touch brief but conveying all that words could not. "Be happy, Richard," I said softly. "You deserve it." He nodded slowly, stepping back with quiet dignity, a peaceful smile spreading across his face, the smile of a man who had found his way home to himself. On the drive back, Brian glanced thoughtfully in my direction, taking my hand gently as he drove. "You've truly impacted him, Emma," he said softly, admiration clear in his voice. "Richard looks genuinely happy now. Whatever happened between you two during those conversations last year, you changed his life." Tears welled in my eyes and I squeezed Brian's hand tighter. "He changed mine too," I admitted, "made me realize just how lucky I am to have what we have." Brian smiled warmly, his eyes filled with tenderness. "We've built something incredible, haven't we?" "We have," I whispered, smiling gently as we drove beneath a canopy of stars. That night, standing quietly on our porch beneath the silvery moonlight, I reflected on everything I had experienced. The bond with Richard had tested my heart, strengthened my marriage, and taught me invaluable lessons about honesty, respect, and emotional courage. I realized something profound. Emotional connection isn't about possession or even physical intimacy. It's the willingness to open your heart fully, to embrace vulnerability, and to honor the boundaries that protect the hearts of others. It's about loving deeply enough to wish someone happiness, even if that happiness exists in a place where you are not central to their story. Turning back into the warmth of my home, I found Brian waiting, offering his hand lovingly. "You all right?" he asked, wrapping me gently in his embrace. "Better than ever," I replied honestly, smiling against his chest, feeling comfort and gratitude flood through me. I wouldn't trade this life we've built for anything. As Brian held me, I knew with absolute clarity that my heart was exactly where it belonged. The emotional journey with Richard had not weakened our love. Rather, it had illuminated its true depth and resilience. I felt reborn, grounded, and profoundly grateful. In the months and years that followed, Richard remained in our lives as a respected friend. His life gradually filled with the emotional depth and sincerity he had sought, and eventually with a love of his own. Brian and I often shared evenings of laughter and friendship with him, never again feeling the tension or uncertainty of that earlier chapter. Looking back now, I realize the most profound truths often come from unexpected places. What began with Richard's suggestion that shocking autumn night, though challenging at first, had ultimately become one of my life's greatest gifts. It showed me the true meaning of emotional intimacy, the power of boundaries, and the strength that comes from honoring our deepest truths. I wonder sometimes, what would you have done in my place when faced with that moment of choice between desire and commitment? Between the intoxicating unknown and the steady familiar? Would you have drawn the line at friendship as I did? Or would you have crossed that boundary, chasing the electricity of new connection regardless of the cost? Be honest with yourself. When someone touches your soul in a way your partner never has, even if it's just emotionally, is staying really the braver choice? Or is it simply the safer one? I don't regret my decision, not for a moment. But I also don't regret allowing myself to feel what I felt, to acknowledge the attraction, to recognize the longing. Those feelings taught me that I was still alive, still capable of being moved, still growing as a woman and as a human being. Sometimes the most profound lessons come from the choices we almost make, but don't. From the roads we glimpse but never travel, from the people who enter our lives briefly, change us permanently, and then step away with grace. And so life moved gently forward, filled with deeper understanding, stronger relationships, and the easy peace that only comes after the storm of uncertainty has passed, leaving behind clarity, warmth, and an everlasting sense of gratitude for the paths both taken and not.